In the rant area, wherever it is that my $5 a month patrons tell me to rant about something. This one is also for Calliope. He tells me to rant about why being a normie is bad. And to be honest, I don't really know how to rant about this subject, because I fundamentally disagree with its premise. Let me explain. Is that typically on the internet, everyone has this normies-re attitude that, being a normie is terrible because they're normal, because they're not depressed, therefore we do not like them, or they're ignorant of the truths of the world, thereby making them normal, whereas we are not because we understand those truths. I have a problem with this standpoint because it's demonizing people for being happy when, if they were somehow educated on these quote unquote truths that the world is terrible and so on, how would that really change anything? What would they suddenly do about it? Do they and moreover, what truths do they have to know to all of a sudden not be a normie? Because I don't think it's a political thing. I think there are normies on every single political spectrum that exists. So if we were to talk about direct action on a systemic level, that is out the window already because someone isn't suddenly not a normie because they agree with your political ideology, because there are normies who agree with every political ideology. So right off the bat, that one is off the list. You can't all of a sudden be exempt from normie status just because you have an ideological position on the political level. And so the only thing that it can be left to is nihilism, is to say that, because this person doesn't agree with me that Schopenhauer was right or that Nietzsche was right and isn't going to be depressed forever, they're wrong. If this person isn't an antinatalist who wants the world to burn, then they're wrong. And that makes them bad because they're normal. I just fundamentally disagree with that standpoint, and I see people use it all the time. They say, "Oh, if only you knew how bad things really are," and things like that. And I just don't see the point. I don't see the point in demonizing other people for being less negative in comparison to you. And like, if someone is doing something that makes them happy and they're not hurting other people, they're a nice person, they're doing okay things throughout their life, they're not propagating anything that's particularly harmful, why would we demonize that person for being average, for doing what it is that everyone else does? Is there something fundamentally wrong with what average people are doing? If that's the premise, maybe I don't understand this, but I don't see anything necessarily wrong with people who are average. I haven't observed a particular trend that I've, you know, seen to be bad that happens within average people. If we were to talk about statistics, statistically speaking, most people don't murder. Statistically speaking, most people aren't psychopaths. They don't do a lot of bad things. So if we're going to go by what average is and therefore what normie is, then how could we possibly say that normie people are somehow bad when they're not committing these egregious crimes? They're not propagating harmful ideas and going around and calling for bad things to happen. I just don't get it. I don't. What about them fundamentally is bad? They're just choosing to live their life a certain way. Sure, maybe they're part of organized religion and they don't know about certain aspects of that organized religion that you may deem to be wrong ideologically from your own subjective standpoint, but who cares? You know, that person gets a sense of meaning, they get a sense of fulfillment based on what it is that they're doing in their life. And if it is not harming anyone else, then why does that matter? Why does it matter to you? I I don't understand it. Like people like a lot of philosophically inclined people try to justify to themselves why being weird is somehow better. There's this video by the Slovenian philosopher Slavoj Zizek, who I'm a big fan of his work, but I disagree with him on a lot of things. is that he had a video called "Why Be Happy When You Could Be Interesting," and like that title alone exemplifies something that I think is deeply wrong with a lot of anti-normie people, is that they demonize happiness and they love failure, is that they relish in it. They love the idea of failing. They love the idea of being someone who is at the bottom of society because somehow that makes them interesting. That gives them an aesthetic, and their aesthetic is the fact that they work a minimum wage job or no job at all. Their aesthetic is the fact that they hate everyone and demonize everyone around them because all of them are doing the bad things. Oh, it couldn't possibly be me who's doing anything wrong. Oh no. And, they just believe that the world is going to burn and that humans are fundamentally terrible and that everyone should be exactly like them because they have everything magically figured out. They just understand the mythical truths of the world that people don't seem to grasp the IQ to be able to understand. Oh, and maybe it's their race, This person, they were born with white skin. These other people, they don't have skin like mine. They don't understand. They don't understand the true depth of my ideological prowess. That's how these people think. They worship failure. And maybe the reason these people aren't liked by other people, maybe the reason they have to quote unquote be interesting instead of being happy is because the choices that they're making are leading to that. And I'm not trying to throw Zizek under the bus. That I'm kind of using his point as in broad strokes. I'm kind of simplifying it and applying it to a different group of people. But I think that's how a lot of these people think, is that they fetishize it, they love it, they love failure. And I just, maybe it's because they've tried every single thing that they can do and then they realize that there's just no other alternative, that they just feel entirely disconnected from humanity, from their own humanity, that the only answer is to connect themselves to external things like abstract concepts and aesthetics and so on, that they somehow feel that that's going to give them the sense of belonging that they need, that the only way they can do that is by demonizing others. But I find it curious because if you look at a lot of the stuff that these people say, is that a lot of the time they're saying stuff like, oh, this group needs to be more inclusive, or they're so unempathetic, why are they disparaging of these groups, when they're doing the exact same thing. Like they're saying that all normal people are inherently bad for these traits, while also saying that those people need to be more inclusive and more empathetic towards people like themselves. But if you want those people to be more inclusive and empathetic, shouldn't you try to do that yourself? Shouldn't you try to extend your hand to those people, give them the benefit of the doubt, argue in good faith, and then come to a compromise, a conclusion between those two individuals and try to find a middle ground? I think that would be the reasonable solution. But it seems that a lot of these more like incel types tend to have enough bad experiences, or they're just socially inept, and so they view those bad experiences as a reason for why humanity is bad. When that, on the whole, that's not the case. There are good and bad people everywhere. That's always going to be true. You can't blame all of humanity just because a lot of them are bad. Like, I had this video called Misanthropy, in which I talked about how a lot of my problems interacting with other people are because, historically speaking, in retrospect, I've been ganged up on by a lot of groups of people, and I didn't really know how to react to it. I didn't know how to defend my position. I would just get embarrassed and scared because those people were saying mean things to me, and I didn't know how to react to it. I didn't really understand it. And so I would end up getting caught in this hole, just digging myself deeper, of responding with shorter and shorter, more embarrassing responses, not knowing how to defend myself and sounding overtly defensive, which is never good. And when you're put into a position like that, because the scales of power within the room start being skewed, is that you're at the bottom now. When you start sounding like you're offended, you're put at the bottom, and the guy who is fighting you is put at the top. And that's what often would happen when I would just disagree with someone, or when I would have a different stance, when I would see things differently, because I didn't know how to market myself. And that's really the key word there, is marketing, because you can market any idea to people. You just have to do it correctly and understand who the market is, and then people will listen to you and like you if you just apply charisma and marketing tactics to it. But I didn't know how to do that at the time, and so in my video Misanthropy, I was kind of going back on this idea, and I was saying, I didn't have the social skills to do stuff like that. But it wasn't the fault of people. It wasn't anything inherent within the human race. The problem was with me not knowing how to adapt to that situation, not knowing fundamentally how to work around those people that I was with, because I didn't know what they wanted. And I didn't really know what I wanted either. And those two factors are incredibly important when you want to market something. And that's the core of what everything is. It's just knowing how to present yourself, knowing how to convey your ideas in a way that is palatable and non-threatening to other people. You can do that with almost any idea. You just have to know who you're talking to, and you have to know how to talk to them. And what I'm getting to here is, with a lot of these people who just demonize normal people, is that at their core, the reason why they do that demonization is because they don't know how. They don't know how to do that, and so they've let their bad experiences lead them to believe that all of those humans are just inherently negative and that they're never going to get anything good out of them. Maybe for someone who's like super, super autistic, they're going to have a very hard time with people for a long time. But even with someone like that, like, they just have to find their group. I believe that there is a tribe for every single person. If you're a sociopath who wants to kill a bunch of people, find a group of people who are sociopaths who want to kill a bunch of people, and then they'll accept you and you guys will be friends. Human beings, they're tribal creatures. This whole broad strokes of normie talk that average quote unquote people are bad, a lot of it comes from people not having their own tribe, that they don't have a group that they can connect with, and that's founded on mutual understanding. And so, because throughout their life they haven't been given that understanding, they have to have an enemy. They have to have a broad group that they demonize and say is terrible, because they haven't been able to experience the acceptance and the love that they've wanted for all this time, because those people aren't really built to be part of their tribe. Some people just aren't made to work together. And that's okay, as long as you guys don't fight with each other, you can coexist. But that doesn't mean they're part of your tribe. It doesn't mean they're part of your inner circle. That is hinged on something much, much more specific. That connection is fostered based on a mutual sense of love and understanding. And those two factors are very complex, very circumstantial and specific, based on your upbringing and what it is that you both mutually value in others. And that's okay. It's just an element of the human experience that we all experience. And the sooner that you find your tribe, the sooner you find people where you can make a connection based on that mutual understanding, the happier you're going to be. Everyone needs that. Well, maybe not everyone. Some people are okay just going out there and being entirely alone. Buddhist monks do exist, after all. But that's just a thought, something to think about. I don't think this climate of demonizing other lifestyles just because they're different is at all healthy. Because at their core, where does it come from? For a lot of the people who are doing this, they do it because their lifestyle, or the way that they are, was demonized by other people at some point, and so they have to take out that pain onto somebody else. And as long as someone is happy doing the right thing, is just living, coexisting with others, there's absolutely no reason to demonize them and say that they're bad. If anything, that person being different than you is a good thing, because it's more ideas, it's another perspective. You aren't inherently correct about everything that you say. It's sometimes, I do it all the time. I'm wrong about a lot of things, and then people in the comments correct me. They tell me, hey, Star, you messed up on this thing. You're incorrect about this thing. And, I might get a little bit mad about it at first, but when I read it and I really think about it, I think, oh, I was wrong. Yeah, I didn't know what I was talking about. And that's important. That's why disagreeing with people is important. That's why different perspectives are important. And I think if we just get rid of that and then say, oh, my group is better than the other, therefore, we should destroy everything, that's not a particularly productive way of conducting society. I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fair to the other people to say, just because you're a normie, you should go away. There's just as much value in those people existing as there is in someone like me existing. And, I may be the least normie person out there, to some at least, but that's okay because I'm sharing my perspective and I'm not trying to hurt anyone. And as long as you're not doing anything harmful, it's okay. It's okay to be someone who is like this. And I don't know. I don't see the need for it. I don't see the need for this us versus them mentality. It's like everyone feels the need to have an enemy, to have a group that is ultimately going to be at the behest of their criticism. And it just, it's focus your energy on something else, I suppose. I feel like this question was kind of a meme, so I'm not trying to rag on Calliope. He gives me a lot of money, so yeah, I'm pretty sure it was a meme. I don't think his stance is like he's not like on the incel spectrum or anything like that, but this is kind of a stance that I've seen hang around a lot, and so hopefully that adequately addresses my thoughts on it.